Think your kids spend too much time in front of screens? And maybe we do too. Welcome to Techstination, and with us is Suzanne Crocker of Dawson City in the Canadian Yukon. She's a mom of three, a family doctor, adventurer, and a filmmaker. Thanks for joining us, Suzanne.
Thanks, Fred. Happy to be here.
Well, first off, in the documentary All the Time in the World, you chronicled the adventures of living with your family, a husband, 3 children, 2 cats, 1 dog, for 9 months completely off-grid in a small cabin in the Yukon bush. But, correct me if I'm wrong, but this isn't so much about survival techniques when it's 40 below. It's more about life and what happens to family relationships in that type of environment.
Yes, it's really about disconnecting in order to reconnect, to reconnect with each other as a family, reconnect with nature.
So tell us what you found with your family in doing this. The kids, I've seen the film, just wonderful. The kids really didn't seem reluctant at all to do this. In fact, they were kind of gung-ho.
Yeah, that's the joys of that age group. Our kids were 10, 8, and 4 when we decided to do this adventure. And really, they had no idea what they were getting into. It was just another camping trip. And they had no objections whatsoever. There would be a different story, I think, if they were 18, 16, and 14. But anyway, it was an amazing experience, Fred. Not only did we not have computers or internet, we didn't even have a single timepiece, so no clocks or watches. And that just really freed ourselves from all these constraints we're usually part of in our life of scheduling and whatnot. So many things happened. I mean, we definitely became better connected as a family. We lived by the seasons rather than the clock. The kids' creativity flourished. They, didn't have a lot of stuff that was meant to entertain them, so they created their own entertainment. They used the forest and had imaginary games. They created board games. They wrote stories. They made their own puzzles and mazes, and they were, for those entire 9 months, I never once heard the words, "I'm bored."
And, well, of course, it was a film, so it was edited, but there didn't seem to be a whole lot of conflict either.
And there wasn't a whole lot of conflict. It's not that I just took out the bad stuff in the editing. It was really quite incredible that how well we all got along, much better than in our previous life. And I attribute that for us as parents anyway, as not having all these distractions and extra things competing for space and time in our brains, and also being incredibly well rested. Without clocks, without a schedule, you would go to bed when you were tired and you'd get up when your body was rested. So imagine that for 9 months, never having to get up to an alarm clock. So I think, that combination, the amazing amount of time outdoors, you don't have to think about getting exercise. You just normally do, chopping wood, hauling water. So for all those reasons, it really brought out the best of ourselves. It brought out our natural senses of humor, our patience, our creativity. Even as parents, we started to play again, which really surprised our kids. And it was very cool.
And through part of this, I don't know how many months it was out of the 9 months, you were pretty much confined to this cabin. You couldn't go outside a whole lot. The kids couldn't play outside for at least part of it because it was just too cold, brutal.
Yeah, I mean, there was never a time when we couldn't go outside at all because we had an outhouse. So you always have to go outside. You always have to get more wood. But yeah,
40 below.
Our coldest day was actually minus 51 Celsius, which I think is around minus 60 Fahrenheit.
And you still go to an outhouse.
You still go to an outhouse, but
Yikes.
the trick is you got a piece of styrofoam on the outhouse hole. That's the magic trick of the North. Now you all know.
But just getting there day and night to the outhouse in that kind of cold is it's numbing just thinking about it.
Well, you're definitely well bundled up. Yeah, but so I would say most every day everybody got outside. I suppose there would be, some small stretches when you'd only go out, for the necessity of the outhouse and getting some more wood. And in that time period, the darkest, coldest part of winter, you do tend to get what we call cabin fever, and that can manifest itself in a variety of ways. In our case, we just got super silly, and so there was a lot of silliness around cabin fever, a lot of laughter, some tears on my part, but even the tears caused laughter because they were not founded on anything. So yeah, there was some time like that. But again, inside or outside, there was just so much creativity that nobody was ever twiddling their thumbs.
Well, so many challenges it would seem. What were some of the biggest that maybe weren't so obvious?
The biggest challenge, I suppose, was just deciding to finally do it, and then getting stuff there. It wasn't an easily accessible place, so getting food for and supplies for 9 months was certainly a challenge. When we were actually there, it just felt so great. Um, there wasn't a time when any of us felt like we wanted to go back home or we missed friends. In fact, by the end of it, I didn't want it to be over. I didn't want to go back to civilization. I felt I could have stayed there for quite a while. So, even the challenges, they didn't seem like challenges. I mean, you have to learn how to cook with a lot of dried food. There's dried milk, dried eggs. It's all dried goods. There's, of course, you have to haul your own water. You have to cut down trees, and wood is your heat source and your cooking source. So there's a lot of wood to be secured. But I would say none of those actually felt like challenges. They were just kind of day-to-day life and didn't even really feel much like chores.
And I mentioned off grid, but you didn't even use solar panels or anything else to generate electricity, except for a small generator that you needed to charge batteries to do this filmmaking.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we originally took in no generator, and I had boat batteries, which are large like car batteries, and an inverter, and that was how I intended to charge the camera. But I quickly found out that wasn't going to last 9 months. It was only going to last about 6 weeks. So I needed a backup plan. And solar, we were there over the winter, and in the winter there isn't a heck of a lot of sunlight. So solar panels were not going to be that helpful. So you're right. We did end up just before freeze up bringing in this very small generator that I would fire up every couple of months to recharge the boat batteries, to recharge the camera batteries. But that was the only thing it was ever used for. So yeah, no electricity. I mean, we did have a chainsaw, so I guess that's mechanical, not and a skidoo, which is also mechanical. So we weren't living, a life before those things were invented, but we were definitely off grid. And And we were also, and I guess you could consider this one of the challenges that there's this period we were on the far side of a river. So there was no road access at all to where we were. And there's these periods in the north of freeze up and break up when the ice is forming on the river and then the ice is leaving the river. And those can last 6 to 7 weeks each. And during that time, there's just no way to cross. It's too icy to boat across and too wet still to walk or ski or skidoo across. So those are times when you really are totally cut off from any ability to leave, but they are also the most magical times. So challenges, I don't know. It's actually for people who live on the far sides of rivers up here. They really love freeze up and break up. It's kind of the best time of year.
And even when you're not in the bush, you're in a small community in the Yukon. What many people would consider, hey, this is remote enough.
Definitely. I mean, I live in Dawson City, which city is kind of a misnomer. We're only 1,500 people. And in fact, all of the Yukon is only about 35,000 people. And Dawson is actually the second largest community in the Yukon. So our capital, Whitehorse, is about 30 of those 35,000. And then Dawson at 1,500 is the second largest community. We have more moose than people in the Yukon. And we have a heck of a lot of wilderness, and Dawson itself is literally at the end of a road. So yeah, we're quite remote and dependent on one road, so quite isolated as well. So yes, you're right. Many people will think of coming to Dawson as a way to get away from it all. And then if you live in Dawson and you still feel like you have to get away from it all, well, then you go to the bush.
You and your husband, we should point out, are family physicians in this small community, and you weren't a filmmaker by trade. How did this happen, and what did you use to make this movie?
You're correct. I retired from doctoring just around the time we were deciding to do this experience. And I actually got into filmmaking thanks to my son. When he was 5, he started getting interested in animation and doing some stop motion animation. And in helping him figure out how to do that, I got hooked with the bug and started doing some stop motion animation. And then I kind of got hooked by the film bug in general and started making short films. And yeah, and now that's my career. Basically, I've changed from doctor to filmmaker. And I think it was aided by the fact of this amazing community of Dawson City, which is a really eclectic community, but it's got a huge art and culture base. And there's a lot of artists and filmmakers who live here. We have a year-round artist in residency, a year-round writer in residency, an art and culture center that brings in folks from all over the place, an annual music festival, an annual film festival. So there's lots of opportunities to be creative. And it's a very it's the kind of community where if you have an idea and you want to try something, you can just try it. You don't feel any barrier to trying it, and people will be supportive. So it's really easy to pick up a camera and just see how it goes and see if you get bit by that filmmaking bug.
So what kind of camera have you picked up?
So at that time, I was using a Panasonic ABC HD camera. So it would be called a prosumer camera. It was not a tiny video camera or handy cam, and it wasn't a big honking TV camera. It was somewhere in between. So it was good quality, but still small and light enough for me to be hauling around in the bush all day. And then I had a tripod, which was incredibly important because there's no crew, of course. It's just us. So if I ever want to be in the shot, the camera has to be on the tripod. And also, I had, from a sound system point of view, I had lapel lav mics, as well as a good external mic on the camera. And then also importantly, because it's quite dark, um, I had an LED light that I could put right on the camera for lighting. So everything had to be compact. Everything had to be quite portable. Everything had to be workable for for one person doing sound and camera, i.e., me. Um, yeah, and it worked out.
People can watch this film online as well as ordering a DVD. Where can people see it?
It's available on iTunes and on Vimeo on demand, and also online on a platform called Available Light on Demand, which also has other Yukon-made films on it. And if you go to the website of the film, allthetimeintheworld.ca, it clearly tells you how you can watch it no matter where you are in the world.
And you're in the midst of getting another film ready. Tell me about that.
I am. The next project is called First We Eat. And I think I might have made the mistake of promising my family after All the Time in the World that I wouldn't film them again. And I broke that promise 7 years later. I was and am very interested in food sovereignty, especially in the North, but also globally. And so because we are dependent on one road that trucks up 97% of our food, and that makes us very vulnerable, I decided to see what it would be like if I took every bit of grocery store food out of our house for a year and only fed my family food that could be hunted, fished, foraged, grown, or raised right here in this tiny northern community of Dawson City, which is only 300 kilometers south of the Arctic Circle. So I did that, and of course I documented it with the camera yet again. And this film will release sometime later this year. There is a website for the film, firstweeat.ca, and there's a sneak peek trailer on there at the moment. And soon, in the next few months, there will be information about the film's release.
Well, you're still here talking to us, so I guess it was doable.
That's right. I spoiler alert, none of us died.
Well, tell us what your thoughts are. Parents wondering about this screen time issue that we talked about at the very beginning. What should parents think about from your perspective? What should they know?
It's quite remarkable how much digital technology and screen time has completely taken over our lives in a very short period of time, and how we all have kind of blindly embraced it. I mean, I know the tools are useful. Here I am doing an interview thanks to technology, but I think there's some real costs to the convenience, and especially when it comes to our kids. My generation, I remember a time without technology, so I remember what it's like to be bored, and I think those are really important. And now when kids start out in a digital age from early on, they never have any chance to develop those same interpersonal skills, that same ability to use their imagination and their creativity when they're bored, and to really connect with people in real time, person to person, which I think is so important. It scares me, actually, what will come of society without that in the future. I made a choice as a parent early on to protect that time. It was not easy. When my oldest son's friends all started getting video games, which was still before cell phones and iPads and all that, I decided that we would not have video games in the house. And I found a program that used to exist called Game Maker where you could program your own video game. It wasn't straightforward, but it was not impossible. So I told him, you can play any video game that you programmed. And here's this software you can use to do it. So he took up that challenge, and he really enjoyed programming video games more than playing them actually for a while. But yeah, and then he quickly went on to design board games and things like that. So our kids, well, nobody in our house owns a cell phone actually, and when my oldest son, who's now in university, left home, of course, then he can do whatever he wants. And the first thing he did was buy himself a cell phone. But even now, he finds that he mostly has it in airplane mode, and he uses it for a useful tool from time to time. But it's not consuming him for sure. And none of the kids have iPads. They do work on laptops. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's been a decision that I made that is controversial, but I actually have no regrets. I feel that my kids are creative, resourceful. They can fill in their free time easily without the use of devices, and they really protect and value their free time. So I think it's a good thing. So I guess my advice after that long-winded answer would be to hold off, like to hold off as long as you possibly can, despite the pressures not to, because I think our kids will be better people for it.
Some screen time suggestion for people who do want to have some: go watch All the Time in the World at allthetimeintheworld.ca. Suzanne Crocker, thank you so much for taking the time with us.
Thanks, Fred.
Cooking with the Power of the Sun. Hi, I'm Fred Fishkin, here to tell you about the latest innovation from my friend Patrick Sherwin and his great team at GoSun Stove. The GoSun Fusion has arrived using the company's tried and true reflectors and a solar vacuum tube to get you cooking without the mess of charcoal, heavy propane tanks, or smoke. A really bright idea. And with an optional solar panel and battery storage and the ability to plug in at home or on the road, you really can use the GoSun Fusion to cook anytime and anywhere, day or night, rain or shine. I love what Patrick and his team are doing, and so will you. Want to learn more? Head to gosun.co to check out all of the company's products and innovations, and use the code Techstination to save 10%. That's gosun.co.